Greetings, people of Earth. Welcome back. My name is Jax, and today we are talking about being a tough act to follow. This is mainly to do with sort of confidence, how you carry yourself, how you enter situations, and how you leave situations. And basically, I really like this phrase, and a friend of mine recently used it to describe a situation I was involved in. And it was very flattering. It was very nice of them to say, but it got me thinking about this expression and how we use it to hype ourselves up, talk about how we have confidence and we carry ourselves with respect and dignity and honesty and open communication. And it made me think that more people should go through life attempting to be a tough act to follow, attempting to have this kind of self-confidence and self-worth. Now, there is no shortage online or in the world today about people sort of acting arrogant or, with no humility, feeling as though they have this inflated sense of self-worth. But just as we have this huge self-worth problem, like some people think they're just incredible and they walk on water, we also have this other side where people are a little too cautious, a little too unsure of themselves, and feel as though they're not good enough, they'll never amount to anything, and that is just as big of a problem. And so I wanted to talk about how you can become a tough act to follow. How do you instill this confidence, this self-assuredness into your life, your relationships, your situations, different things you end up going to? How do you infuse yourself and become a tough act to follow? And I think about certain people I have known or encountered who I associate with this. These people are tough acts to follow. They are really interesting and confident people. And how do they do that? How do they embody this idea where people take notice? They notice the way these people act and behave and even just exist, their presence, their aura, their ability to sort of make everyone in the room sort of turn quietly and look at them and take notice of them. And you might not necessarily want that kind of attention or that kind of level of, persecution or basically just attention on yourself. But it does help in a lot of situations. And we have learned that many people seem to ride through life on a cloud of air, and they make it look so easy. And how do they do this? And I think from what I've understood, these people who are tough acts to follow tend to be very open, very honest. Being genuine is a huge part of it. Being unapologetic about their passions, their beliefs, not necessarily making themselves the center of attention, but sort of subtly and unconsciously making you pay attention to them, making you feel as though, man, this person is the main character of this scene. If life is a movie, every single scene, they're the center shot, And like I said, I think a huge part of that is genuine interest and passion. I've talked about this before, but I think passion is one of the most attractive things anyone can have and anyone can embody. Having a passion about what you do, different topics that you know about, the things that you are getting done in life, like just being passionate and involved. And I think that rolls over into the idea of like mindfulness. These people are really present in the moment. They're not checking their phone during your conversation. They are fully present and ready to engage with you in whatever situation that they find themselves in. And when you do that, when you have that mindfulness and that presence in a situation, people pay attention. People notice that. They really lock into it and they try and reach that same level that you're at. They try and say, man, this person's so locked into what we're doing. Like, I gotta lock in a little bit more. And it draws you in, it pulls you in like a current, and it becomes really hard not to get swept away in their ability to do this. And it becomes very magnetic. I think it is very powerful when dating or when with your friends or family. I think people tend to focus in, and the distractions, social media, texting, bright lights, sound, music, whatever's happening, those things all kind of fade away, and you are just left in the present with a person who is being present, if that makes sense. These people also have this genuine nature about them. They're not focused in on trying to be a tough act to follow. They just are. They embody this. And while it's kind of hard to talk about this subject because it's one of those things that once you become very conscious of it, it can be hard to be genuine about it. But like I said, I think staying in that present moment and really locking in and focusing on the situation you're in or whatever helps you negate that voice in the back of your head saying, oh my gosh, am I being present? Am I being mindful? You just lock in and you just focus on the thing. And if you have ADHD or ADD or some kind of attention problem like I do, it can be really hard to focus on one thing. But thankfully, if you do have one of those things, one of our superpowers is the ability to be focused in on stuff that we're passionate about or the things that we're really interested in. I was never great at math until I kind of fell in love with math and actually wanted to try working on it and figuring out how it worked and how do you set up the equations. And suddenly I saw the beauty in math and the symmetry and geometry and trig and all of these things. And so then suddenly my attention was able to really lock into it. So I'm hoping that I'm able to lock in to situations I find myself in and be present, be genuine, be respectful and kind, which I think are very underrated right now. The idea of being kind is not sexy. It's not this cool thing that everyone wants to be. Oh my gosh, lead with kindness. We are inherently getting more and more cynical, and we tend to disbelieve whatever is in front of us, and we think, this can't be genuine. This isn't the real thing. I'm not looking at something. I'm not just looking at a box, there's something in the box, or how do I open the box? And we always bring these ulterior motives into situations that we find ourselves in. And that takes away from the presence, that takes away from the genuine admiration of something. And I'm not advocating for you to just blindly go through life sort of all hunky-dory, toxic positivity, but I am saying it can really up your, not reputation, it can really up your interactions with other people and how they perceive you. The people I know in my life who are tough acts to follow, who when they leave a room, you're left kind of thinking like, wow, what an interesting and genuine individual. Like, man, I want to see this person again. Those kinds of people are never really being calculated. They're not really being cynical. They're not easy to fool. I'm not saying you just need to go through life like a beautiful fool, but they have this way about them that seems to give them this independence and this untouchability, and yet they are at the same time very reachable, very approachable. These are people that you're not afraid to go up to and have a conversation with. These people don't aura farm. They don't try and look intimidating or really attractive in public. They just are who they are. They know their style. They know what they like. They know their dislikes. They know how to avoid situations they don't want to be involved in. And I think all of that together creates this idea that, man, this person is a tough act to follow. This person really is their own genuine person. And I guess that comes into identity. That comes into the idea of really knowing who you are. And you might ask one of these people, like, how do you see yourself? And honestly, they might not even be able to really tell you how, but they just embody this specific identity. They're not really willing to people please or compromise their way of life or how they do things. They just exist, and this is how they've known how to do it. And I really believe that you can learn how to do this. This is not something that can inherently just, you're born with and that's it. Like, if you weren't born with it, that's it. I'm sorry, you're hooped. No, I think being present, being mindful, really spending some time with yourself and figuring out what exactly am I looking for in life? What is my direction? What is my mission? What is my goal? Again, these are things that are constantly being purported to be unimportant. Like we're told all the time, like, no, you'll just figure it out. Have fun in your 20s, you know? And yet the people that you meet who really strike you as striking their own path or, you know, forging their own path are people who aren't necessarily doing the standard. They're not necessarily following all of the rules or the light rules of society. You know, maybe they didn't go to college. Maybe they went to college for something really specific that they wanted to do. Maybe they have a situation in their job or their life that they are really happy with. They're very fortunate to have it, or they worked hard for it, or they got really lucky, and they don't feel the need to compromise their identity or who they are. And I think the final thing I want to say about these people, and the thing I'm working on really hard, is to never be in a rush. These people are totally fine having a 5-minute conversation with the checkout person at the grocery store. They are totally fine if they run into someone they went to high school with and just chat with them for a few minutes. You know, they are never in a rush to get things done. They're never in a strict sense of, oh, I need to worry and be anxious about this. Anxiety is not a thing these people really embody or worry about. They know how much time they have. They know that they'll be able to get what they need to do in that time period. And they're really not rushing or feeling as though they're somewhere else. And it comes back to being present in the moment. It comes back to being mindful and understanding, this is what I've got to do. I will get it done, you know? And if that takes making some lists in the morning or whatever it does, it's very effective. And like I said, it's very striking. It's always interesting when you meet somebody who is like this, who really on the surface appears to understand the way the world is going, understand where they are going. And maybe they don't internally, maybe they don't feel this way, but they give you this strong impression, and it's not because they're trying to give you this impression, it's just because that's how they embody themselves. That's going back to the genuine nature of who these people are. So if you can, you know, strike up a conversation with someone you feel is a tough act to follow and pick their brain a little. They're usually very open. They're very genuine about how they live their life. They almost always have a really interesting world philosophy or philosophy for life and how they go through it. And you might be very surprised. So let me know what you think on this idea of being a tough act to follow. I myself am trying my best to be present and mindful in the moments that I feel are important to do so. And as always, I hope you guys are amazing, and I hope you have an amazing day, week, month, year, whatever you're having. I hope it's amazing. And as always, I will talk to you guys tomorrow.